Timmy, this would sound much better if I was actually from New York or had a Brooklyn accent. But today, Timmy and I discuss, amongst other things, the election of the new mayor of New York City, as well as the impact, long-term and short-term, of last Tuesday's elections.
Bald,
blind,
and buddies.
Timmy C, what do you have for me today? I'm talking to you from the eastern branch of Bald, Blind, and Buddies. In the snow, a little bit cold here, kind of flurrying. And it's a Tuesday, it's not a Monday. And that's my fault, and I'll explain in just a moment. But how you doing, pal?
Doing good. Yeah, nice Tuesday. It's little snow here. It's cold. Not a fan.
No. But you've never really lived in a warm climate, and that astounds me. Like, you went from Iowa to northern Indiana to Wisconsin. I mean, there are 47 other available options, right?
Yeah, someday, John.
Okay, all right. Do you have a wish list, like where you'll end up?
I don't know. Maybe Tennessee, something like that.
I like Tennessee a lot. In fact, Katie and I were in Charleston, South Carolina. Like South Carolina a lot. As it happens, I want to go to the losing side of the Civil War.
Yeah.
So, do you know what they call it in the South? The Civil War.
What do they call it? Northern aggression. The War of Northern Aggression. Yeah.
The War of Northern Aggression. So I find that to be funny. Tennessee, I like. North Carolina, I like. I really like Nashville. I was really drawn to Nashville. I really like Charleston, South Carolina. But I don't have to live in Charleston. I could live, in South Carolina or northern Georgia or those kinds of things. I think that's ultimately where we'll head. But, the other thing I always tell people is don't rule out moving out of the United States. I mean, you can go live in Central America, in Guatemala or in Nicaragua or Honduras for pennies on the dollar and spectacular beach towns and so forth. So, but I think what we'll end up doing, realistically, who knows? I mean, I could drop dead tomorrow, but is to move down south and then travel a bit. That's kind of my hope when I have some time. So,
that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any wants out of life? Or anything that you?
It'd be neat to retire to Ireland. Actually, I don't know why. I really like.
You liked Ireland, yeah?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool. The country. That's one of those rare places where you go see anything but the cities.
Yeah.
So. And speaking of Ireland, the reason we are recording on a Tuesday is I had my opportunity to take my family back to the Fighting Irish, the home of the Fighting Irish. What school is that again, Timmy?
Notre Dame, John. University of Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Yeah. I have never been back as quote unquote an adult, and to be fair, I still don't qualify. But I had to rent a car, figure out the VRBO, and so forth. And a couple things. Number one, we stayed in a very cool town. I texted all of my Notre Dame guys. I think I even texted you to get tickets. Number one. Number two, find out where to stay because, South Bend isn't exactly a booming metropolis. There's Notre Dame, and then there's not much else. And a lot of people had said go to New Buffalo, Michigan, which, as it turns out, was perfect. It was right on Lake Michigan, cool little lake town. Kind of, like most summer places, kind of dead this time of the year, but quite a number of Notre Dame folks. So it appears it's on the radar, and it's a 30-minute straight shot, 35-minute straight shot to Notre Dame. So that was very cool, and I got to take my kids walk around. But, Timmy, I am a big believer that modernity marches on, and one of the things I always tell people is, people who used to make a living fixing horseshoes and saddles and such, they were put out of work, and that's unfortunate. But the automobile made all of our lives better, right? So modernity advancement is unstoppable. That being said, I walk into Dillon Hall, and do you know what I find at 116, 117?
What?
Nothing. Our rooms don't exist anymore, Tim.
Oh, man.
They took them away. There's sitting areas, there's study rooms, and the ladies' bathroom, and the mailboxes. So your room and my room, all the way down to Mark Pratt and Bitterpat's room, 116, 117, 115, respectively, gone. And the remainder of that hallway is study rooms. Bocan's room isn't even there. It's gone. Gone. I know. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe I noticed that on the last time I was there, but I figure study area fits my room. That's what I used it for, anyways.
I hate to tell you, but I think you're the sitting area in the ladies' room.
Oh, but well, hey, if the ladies need a bathroom, it's fine with me.
You're not exactly the most sentimental and emotional person, so you're probably like, whatever, move on.
It's all good.
Yeah. And what are we talking about today, Timmy? Because I always enjoy when you bring up that you're very excited about a topic. So what are we talking about? Why don't you tell our dozens and dozens of listeners?
Yeah, we are talking about the recent elections, especially for the mayor of New York, Zohrhan Mamdani's election.
Okay. Which is a perfect segue because that leads to my trivia question. I'll give the answer to last week's trivia, right?
Yep.
And then this week's trivia. We were talking baseball. I love baseball. You're not as big a fan as I. Given the choice, my loves in life in terms of sports are Notre Dame football, the Yankees, and then the Giants. So given the choice between having the Yankees win the World Series, which again, sticks in my craw because it's not the World Series, and the Giants winning the Super Bowl, both would be delightful. Mm-hmm. It's like pizza. Pepperoni or cheese is delightful. I prefer pepperoni. I'll choose the Yankees winning the World Series. And to that end, the question is, the Dodgers won back-to-back. They have an opportunity next year to be the first team in quite a bit to win 3 in a row. Do you know the 2 teams that were able to win 3 World Series in a row?
I would have said the Yankees, and I don't know the other one.
And you would be correct. The Yankees won in 1996, then they won in 1998, 99, and 2000, respectively. They almost won 4 in a row. And were in the World Series in 2001, but lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the second team to do it actually was the Oakland Athletics in the early 1970s. I think it was 70 to 73. Now, before it was called the World Series, the Yankees won 5 in a row, but that didn't count. But
what was it called then?
I don't know. I don't know. So, but most answers in sports, if you have a hockey trivia question, the answer is Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
If you have a baseball question, baseball team question, the answer is the Yankees. Right? So, yeah. But we're going to be talking politics today, so that leads to this week's trivia question. Thank the lucky stars, by the way, but it appears the government shutdown is about to end. Now, they're just doing a temporary funding measure that we're going to have to revisit all these issues again right after the new year. But
government kicking something down the road a short way? Let me sit down, John.
Did you happen to catch the Babylon Bee this week? It said government can now move on from doing nothing because of the shutdown to doing nothing because they're Congress.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So the question is, the government shutdown is about to end, and I'll tell you there was a good side to it. I'll tell you that in a second. But the trivia question is, it was the longest government shutdown, this just concluded, in U.S. history. Do you know when the second longest government shutdown was?
Ooh, I have a hunch.
Yeah. But answer next week.
Yep.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, everybody talks about global warming and the terrible effects, and I'm sure it's true. But, I don't mind mild winters. We really have not gotten the snow that we did even 7, 8, 10 years ago. And the government shutdown, we went to Philadelphia Airport, and, it's nice to not have to be there at 6 a.m., so we got like a 10 o'clock flight. We landed in Chicago at 11, took our time. Kids all had fun, blah, blah, blah. We walked in there, Timmy, it was like a ghost town. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? The woman said, a bunch of flights have been canceled, number 1. Number 2, a lot of the air traffic controllers and so forth are calling out sick. And number 3 is it's Friday. So, Timmy, it was delightful. If there's 1,000 people per square foot in that place, normally there was 10.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a pure delight. It was so fast getting through security that I have TSA pre-check. My family beat me doing the regular.
Wow.
I know. So, but anyhow. These are first world problems, but are you okay with the government? I know how you feel about government generally. So real quick, how do you feel about the government shutdown? And let's talk about the election results, because those two things go hand in hand, I think.
Oh, I was fine with the government shutdown. For the most part, there certainly are people who depend on, redistribution of wealth via the government. But the fact that most people's lives actually weren't greatly disturbed, I think is a positive sign.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing, though, that I always worry about is the poor. And it's a sizable percentage of the population, whether we like to admit it or not, that is dependent on the supplemental nutrition and aid program SNAP. And there's the unfortunate thing is the poor, don't vote. And so politicians generally don't have to tailor to them. And in fact, it's very easy to victimize them. And there's probably validity on both sides. I get it. I do. There's people that are taking advantage of the system. There are people that genuinely need it. The truth is somewhere in between. But it pains me that that's kind of something that suffers as a consequence. So,
right. Yeah.
But Timmy, why don't you hold court? Tell me about the mayor of New York. His name is Zohrhan. Do you pronounce it Zohrhan or Zohrhan?
I've heard Zohrhan.
Mamdani.
Yeah, Mamdani.
Yeah.
So he was elected mayor of New York. Now, I think it's He's a, I don't know what he calls himself, a democratic socialist, economist.
Democratic socialist. He was an assemblyman in New York. Yeah.
Right. And I think first, before we comment on anything, I think it is important to recognize this is a profoundly American story. So he was born somewhere else. His parents came to America ostensibly for opportunity. And he rose through the ranks to lead one of our largest cities.
The largest.
Yeah. This would not happen in Beijing, right? You would not have a first generation person. Beijing, Moscow, or even where he's from, right? The fact that
Where is he from originally?
Oh boy, it's a good question.
Okay. Well,
have to look it up.
One of our eager beaver listeners, I was remiss in looking that up, but I did know he was
I don't want to say it wrongly. But I mean that's amazing, right? And that is something wonderful about America that I think just deserves a little pause.
Hey, here. I think that's wonderful. He's young. He's 34 years old. New York is the biggest city in the country. And, that is a profoundly, to your point, American story. It's really quite something. Let me see. He is an avowed democratic socialist. But again, I think that he is, the quintessential American story. That being said, why don't you start on your rant about a democratic socialist being elected the mayor of New York? I tend to see politics as a pendulum. We elected Trump on the one extreme, and this is a reflexive action. And unfortunately, I think the only way you can get back to the center is by having cooler heads prevail.
And this is not that.
I think the impact of him being elected the mayor of New York is dramatically overstated. He's actually born in Uganda. I looked this up as we're talking. I think his impact is profoundly overstated. There are people who, say the world is ending, and I think I have learned in the year that I have stepped away from politics that as grotesque and as, much as I disagree with Trump and the Trump administration, what he represents, I do, A, understand why people voted for him, B, I get his appeal, and C, the world has not ended as a consequence. For better or for worse. To that end, I don't think that businesses are suddenly going to up and leave the New York market because an avowed democratic socialist, because I just don't think he'll be able to accomplish what he said on the campaign trail. Now you hold court.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when I'm hearing echoes of how you thought Elon Musk was going to run into the governmental meat grinder and not get anything done. It kind of sounds like the same assessment of
and I was 100% correct.
You were.
That, was I not?
You were, absolutely.
I was actually surprised he found out as quickly. I figured it'd take a couple weeks before he was ground to a halt.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah. So
let's start with the wisdom of the founding parents, John. Notice I'm not using any gendered names there. So the founding parents...
You're such a wise ass.
At a time when lifespan was much shorter, how old did you have to be president?
You have to be 35.
35, right?
Yeah. It's the only thing there's age specific for the senator. You have to be 25 to be a member of the House of Representatives, 30 to be a senator, and 35 to be the president.
Do you know?
The implication being that with age comes wisdom, I suppose.
And do you know what the size of the U.S. was roughly in 1790?
I'd say it's probably a third of what it is now. It's 350 million people. Let's say 125 million.
3.9 million.
Get out, really?
In
1776?
Yeah, around that time, 3.9 million. It did not get to the size of New York till somewhere around 1810. So what they knew is that it takes a level of sophistication and life experience and wisdom to govern something. And they said something 3 million people in size. And so we put someone 34 years old governing something 8 million people in size. And
20 if you include the metropolitan area. Yeah, 2025.
So we're ignoring the wisdom of the founding parents.
Oh, come on. You're telling me. I think part of the reason they did that was life expectancy was low and they wanted, age correlates with wisdom. Isn't that an ageist statement you just made right there?
I don't think so. It's interesting. So you could enter Congress at 25, and it turns out that the frontal lobes of the brain sort of finish.
Now, this is your area, so I'm not disputing it.
Yeah, finish connecting up or myelinating in your mid-20s. So it's, you could say it's coincidence or it was observational wisdom that they chose to put people in Congress after brains essentially fully mature. So I think there's something to this that
But that knowledge was not known in 1776.
it was
or
not
1787.
experimentally validated, but the fact that people get more mature in their 20s could have been observed as long as they've been human beings, right?
Fair enough.
So
all right, so let's skip over the age issue. Let's say
Okay.
that Mamdani is 65 years old. You know, the quintessential sort of politician who's been there, been around the block. There is something to be said of a fresh new face, is there not? I'm not per se a huge fan of his. I know some of his campaign promises, which, you know, Trump makes outlandish statements on the campaign trail on the one side. He did the same on the other side.
They're absurd.
I think both can
Just
be wrong,
absurd.
right?
Yeah.
Right, but what is your issue with Mamdani aside from the fact that he's 34 years old?
Well, my issue is that he's a communist, right? I mean, government run. So here's the thing. If you look at the demographics of the people who broke for him, he had strong support from young college graduates, especially women, where he pulled 84% of women under 29 years old. So these are people, John, who don't have the life experience to remember the fall of the Berlin Wall or Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, but
right?
Timmy, you and I weren't alive when Kennedy was assassinated. That doesn't mean that I'm any
But
less.
we remember bread lines. We remember stories about this. And these people hear government-run grocery store, and they don't think of that, right?
Yeah, what are some of his more outlandish promises? Didn't you create a list?
No, I actually didn't create a list. I created a top 10 list, top 6 things that I'm looking forward to in his reign.
All right, but before
as
you
commissar of New York.
let me give you some of his sort of profound statements. I think the first thing that needs to be recognized is, you know, being against something is not enough in politics, and that's one of my frustrations oftentimes with Democrats, which is all they think they have to do is say, I'm not Trump, or prior to that, I'm not George W. Bush, or prior to that, I'm not Reagan, you know, these kinds of things. There is an element of you're going to get your base out to vote based upon the idea of you're not that person. I understand it. But you also have to represent being for something. And I think one of the things that the Democrats writ large, at least the exit polls have shown this from Tuesday's election, have focused on is affordability. Just, living lifestyle, living affordability. And Mamdani, to his credit as a politician, has said he's going to remain laser focused on that issue. So that's number one. Some of his more outlandish promises, free buses. I don't know what the premise behind that is. I don't know why we're giving away free buses, but Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, kind of tamped that down today, saying she's not in favor of that. And again, I think that's indicative that politics is going to chew this person up. I think some of his promises are going to end up in the Cuisinart. He is, for universal pre-K and childcare. That, to me, is at least starting the discussion, because we are one of the few countries, and certainly the only developed country, that does not have childcare as sort of an asset of our governance. And I think by starting that conversation, there is something to be gained in our politics writ large. He's talked about, to your point about city-owned groceries and things of that nature. I think the overarching theme is he's sort of hitting on the greatest hits of socialism. I get it, and rent control and these kinds of things.
Yeah, we know how these pan out, John. I mean,
right,
but this is a triumph of ignorance.
Right, but you excuse everything that Trump says.
No, I don't.
No, you don't. I apologize. That's overstating it. You basically say he's a fabulist, and he just, you even said you have to admire his audacity last week. And I said, no, you don't. Why is not the same thing true on the flip side? Is it because you don't agree with him? I get it. My point being is I'm not for free buses. I am certainly not for government control of grocery stores. Rent control in New York is a unique phenomenon to that city, and it's been enacted multiple times over the years. There's a rent control commission. The basic premise is, I've seen estimates that 25% or up to 1/3 of all apartments in New York are owned as second residences by very, very wealthy and affluent people. The Shah of this and the Prince of that and these kinds of things. It's nice to have that kind of money, but you're driving up the cost for everybody who actually lives there. So but
we know that price controls create shortages. That's just how it works, and this plays out everywhere when you try to implement rent controls. That's what happens. People don't build. Things don't become available. That's what happens.
I don't see that. as an extension of what's actually going to happen in New York City. I think New York City writ large, particularly the businesses that run there, are going to go, "You're a real cute kid, now get out of the way."
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember when we were in college and people would run for the president of Notre Dame and they talk about how they're going to take down the water tower and do all these other things? And I'm thinking to myself, you're a 19-year-old dipshit. Like, you're not going to get any of this stuff done. And I'm not minimizing or trying to say, oh, he's just, 34, he's not going to get that. I just think that the reality of politics is going to run headlong into his campaign promises. That's pretty much all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just think it's a triumph of people who haven't retained the institutional memory about the dangers of socialism and communism. Right,
but I think this is also a necessary. I think two things can be true at the same time: is a necessary or an expected reaction to the re-election of Trump. Is it not? I mean, he is as far on the right and crazy as this guy is crazy on the left.
I actually don't think Trump is far on the right. I think he's a
No, he's definitely not. I think he's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyone who is bringing naval ships to just attack without war authorization, even his Republican colleagues, and I'm not for drugs. I am for the legalization of drugs, but I don't think you're ever going to stop the supply of drugs. He's just attacking boats and planes and such. He doesn't have congressional authorization to do this.
There's an interesting...
That's craziness to me.
Yeah, there's an interesting Wall Street Journal article that basically says the people who voted for Mamdani are, I sent this to you, they're basically the great inflated young adults with a ton of debt who are realizing that they have to work hard and things cost a lot of money and they're not getting paid what they think they're worth. And I think there's probably something to that.
You're not going to hear me disagree. Here. This generation, and I hate to speak in broad strokes and generalities, but simply because you graduated college does not mean you're going to come out and make $500,000 a year,
or be able to afford living in New York.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and maybe this dovetails with what we were talking about earlier. Go move to Tennessee; it's quite nice. I found South Carolina, and it's less expensive than a lot of places to be absolutely delightful. I've lived outside of New York. I've lived in London. You and I lived outside of Chicago. We've lived in some expensive places. I don't need to necessarily do that. So.
Yeah.
But why don't you come up with your 6? I interrupted you.
Okay.
Tell us your 6.
My 6. You ready?
Ready.
Number 6. Sure is nice that those billionaires fled because they always left the helipad such a mess. Number 5. Makes Rudy Giuliani not look quite so crazy. Number 4. Newark becomes the well-run metropolis in the region. Next. Shortages at state-run grocery stores may chip away at the obesity pandemic.
True. Okay.
Best reality TV. See if someone who's never run anything larger than a lemonade stand can run the U.S.'s largest city. And who knows? Maybe communism will work this time. There you go.
All right. Fair enough. Now, I have to take issue with just one thing, and far be it for me to defend the man who has completely lost his mind. But I will go to my grave telling you there was no finer mayor. He was
probably
wonderful in the United States than Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor.
Yep.
It's his post-mayor. I mean, had he died in 2010, they would quite literally be naming every road in the greater metropolitan New York area after him. Airports would be renamed and so forth. I think that he is the quintessential politician, and their egos are such that they have an insatiable appetite for attention and being involved. And for better or for worse, he's been involved and just... He's crazy. But he was a fabulous mayor.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow. But I think the other thing to take from Tuesday, and tell me I'm wrong on this, Timmy, is one of the things, it's almost a mathematical certainty. If there's a Republican in the White House, the next year in the New Jersey and Virginia governorship elections, respectively, it's almost a fait accompli that the other party wins. Now, what makes this one particularly unique is the Democrats were able to hold on to the governorship of New Jersey, even though Phil Murphy, a Democrat, had been in office 8 years. So this will be a 12-year run for the Democrats, assuming Mikey Sherrill, makes it through a first term. That's unique in politics writ large. It's very rare to see 12 straight years. Americans tend to tolerate 2 terms, 4 years times 2, and then kick the bums out, as it were. That's why George H.W. Bush, was impressive that he won in 1988. Yeah. In Virginia, the governor can only serve 1 term. This woman who was a congresswoman, Abigail Spanberger, and Mikey Sherrill, they were, I think Abigail Spanberger, I'll have to look it up, and if I misspeak, I apologize, but I believe she had a military record. Both had been in Congress. Both, whether you like politicians or not, had impressive enough resumes as politicians to be elected. Why I'm saying all this is there tends to be an overreading. There's an old saying in sports: the quarterback gets way too much credit for a win and takes way too much credit for a loss. Simply because the Democrats won does not necessarily mean that the country has suddenly said, "Oh man, we made a mistake on Trump." It's the first step towards that, I think. But this would have been the same had Joe Biden won or Kamala Harris won re-election. I'm convinced of it. A Republican would have won in both states. So people tend to overread these results, overread the reaction. What I do think it portends, though, is that next year in the midterms, but again, this is also the truth, that the vast majority of the time, it's, but a handful of times since World War I, the party out of power picks up significant amounts of seats both in the Senate and the House. But I think it's a testament to Democrats that they've started to recruit quality, relatively centrist candidates. What say you, Tim? Is there anything that I'm not reading from this, or that you read differently from the election results?
Not really. I only peripherally followed those.
Yeah, but it's kind of, you really are obsessed with the New York election. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, why do you think he won? Let's start there. I mean,
it's all ignorance. It's sheer ignorance.
Well, could you not say the same thing about people who voted for Trump? And is that not the accusation that people leveled, you're being an elitist simply because you don't like the candidate they picked? I mean, I'm
not being an elitist. I'm just learning. I mean, John, communism has killed tens of millions of people, and billions still
you're
live
talking
under
about
its
communism
boots.
when it's actually instituted. This is never going to be instituted. Do you think, let's go down the laundry list of crazy things. He wants to raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour. I actually do think that will probably happen over the next decade, particularly in the most expensive city in the country, New York. Okay.
So do you know what happens when you raise the minimum wage?
Nothing.
You lose jobs, and you lose entry-level jobs.
That's always the contention of Republicans. There's no evidence to back that up.
There is evidence.
And in fact,
there isn't. We'll find it. We will
okay,
find it.
I'm sure you will. You will find the 3 business owners that have complained about this. I think more than anything, what price controls and price in general, and why this is the affordability issue, I think has resonance, is the COVID pandemic. We threw $30 trillion at an issue, and there's going to be some fat that needs to be trimmed. It was kind of this idea I think people were waiting for. Groceries are doubling in price. They'll come back once COVID's over. No, the producers realized you can pay it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're 80 grand in debt after your gender studies degree and you can't find a job to make your loan payments, you're going to say things are unaffordable.
Right. Okay. I understand you're creating. This is always the straw man on Fox News. The 80,000 in debt liberal who lives with their parents and finds New York to be unaffordable. I think writ large, you and I couldn't afford to live in New York, right? I think there is a truth somewhere in the middle. And I don't know if it's young people are suddenly stupid, like you're saying. It wasn't just young people who voted for him. I had to accept a cold dose of truth about Trump. It wasn't just wealthy people who voted for him. People who traditionally voted Democrat, and the numbers indicate this, voted for him. Yeah. So should not you learn something from his election? I think he's going to be a flash in the pan. I just think that this was a natural reaction to the extreme that Trump presented, and this is how people dealt with it.
Okay. That's my best hope. That's my hope, is that he'll run into the reality of government. Yeah. And that we'll have enough guardrails.
I have tons of evidence to make you feel better. I could give you umpteen examples.
Yeah. So,
right?
That's what I can hope for.
Do you really believe he's a communist, or do you really believe that he's just saying certain things because that kind of gets the numbers?
That's a great question.
I wonder if Tucker Carlson, for instance, he's in a storm right now because he had on Nick Fuentes. I wonder, and I say this about you too, you tend to be incendiary because it's fun. Like you just talked about the $80,000 in debt gender studies student, right? Aren't you making broad-based generalities? I mean, the vast majority of people who live in New York are, it's important to remember that only 38% of America has a college degree. That's number one. Number two, when we fall into these traps, it makes us feel better. I think there's something to be learned from both Trump's election and Mamdani's election. I think that the lessons will largely be the same, which is the answer to one extreme, unfortunately for voters, tends to be the other extreme, and then the middle is where most people end up.
Okay. Yeah, I can live with that. And I'm hopeful that he will be ineffectual.
Okay. You're not wishing him success?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
What if he turns out to be an excellent mayor and all of this stuff that he promised, free buses, free this, free that, blah, 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 is just lip service to get the voters?
Well, then he's a dishonest politician.
And that makes him unique how, exactly?
No, I don't know.
Right? I mean...
But I, once again, you can talk about Trump, but you get what he's selling. Right? Like it's there isn't a bait and switch.
I don't know if I'm going to disagree with you on. So foundationally, I'm going to disagree with you on. Prices have people tell me I'm wrong on this, and I'm going to reduce it or distill it down to its essence. I think people were upset about the cost of living in 2020 or from 2020 to 2024, given the choice between Joe Biden, who clearly age was taking an impact that the White House, for better or for worse, was able to hide. And then they hand you Kamala Harris. And there is this notion that it's better the devil we know than the one we don't. I think people were so upset about the cost of living that they said, I don't care what Trump does as long as he fulfills some of these campaign promises. To my mind, he really has not, aside from the immigration issue, which we can talk about in a second.
And tariffs.
Right, he's fulfilled his promises in a certain way, but I don't think tariffs are a good thing, and I think Americans writ large are finding that out. Secondarily, the Catholic Church, for all of its warts, and I think there are many, is to their credit really starting to attack about the treatment of immigrants. I think saying we have an immigration problem and dealing with it is one thing. Doing what Trump is doing, which is just rounding up people, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's thugs. That are just jumping out of vans and stuff. I don't find that to be acceptable. What I'm getting at is I don't think Trump has fulfilled very many of his campaign promises, and the ones that he has, meaning shooting drug boats and dealing with illegal immigration, I don't think the American public really wants that. Am I wrong, Tim?
No, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I feel like it's not a big pivot. It sounds like you're saying Mamdani promises these things and then does something very different. I think...
No, I think that you say things on the campaign trail that you have whether you're Republican, Democrat, mayor of New York, or local dog catcher. I think you say things on the campaign trail to make sure to motivate your base of voters. And then when you get into office, as tends to be the case, you realize there are disparate challenges, disparate groups coming at you, and somehow or another just trudging through is what most people are forced to do.
Right.
And you could look back and say, you know what, I moved the needle a little bit. I think Obama, I think Reagan, I think some of these guys can look back in 40 years and say, I was the one who ultimately was, in Reagan's case, dealt with the Soviet Union. In Obama's case, got universal health care, at least approached it. I think Mamdani's purpose is to start the discussion about things like early childhood education, these kinds of things.
Yeah, well, and I also do agree. Affordability is a huge issue. I disagree with how you go to solve it.
Right, but Trump hasn't done anything either.
No.
And in fact, he's made
and
it
he's
more
not
expensive
the
with
mayor of New
tariffs.
York.
I know, he's the president of the United States. He's unilaterally imposing tariffs on countries. He imposed tariffs on Canada because they hurt his feelings. They made an ad about it. I mean, we're dealing with a petulant child with real power, and you're concerned about Mamdani, who's a 34-year-old mayor of New York. You don't even live within 1,000 miles of New York.
Who's a big child with real power. Yeah. So,
right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I hear you. It's all good.
But the one thing I will caution Democrats before I get into our hero and our whack job of the week is the following. Please don't overread this stuff. I just read an article. I was not aware that it was this pronounced, but Joe Biden, to me, it was a quintessential centrist sort of center-left Democrat. Tough on crime, blah, blah, blah. Sure, he shaded certain things, but once he became president, something like his first executive orders, 100 of them, first 100 executive orders, like 84 of them had to deal with illegal immigration, like opening the border and blah, blah, blah. I didn't know that. Don't govern to your base. Govern. It's terrible to say this because when you get brought to a dance, you dance with who brung you, right?
Yeah.
His base got him in there, yet you really want to tailor your politics, whether you're Republican or Democrat, to people who don't tend to turn out to vote, because it's like they're the ones that are the middle America.
Yeah. I mean, you're the president of the whole United States.
But yeah.
So John, before we move on to whack job and hero, we're on the cutting edge here, ball blinded buddies. I gotta say, on the AI revolution. So I used AI to try to generate a theme song for our podcast. So I thought we would debut it for our listeners and see what they think. Are you ready?
Couldn't be more ready.
The world debut. All right, here we go.
We ride the waves of morning light, Two voices blending side by side. No secret shared, just simple smiles. Bald blind buddies on this ride. Hear our laughter in the open air. Oh, walking roads without a single care. We're a podcast of two wandering souls. Bald blind buddies on the road.
Tim, it sounds like a country song I'd hear on the radio. It does. And I have to tell you, I told you this before. When it comes to music, I've never really paid attention to lyrics.
Yeah.
Do you? I kind of just like songs.
I do.
And then sometimes when you hear the lyrics and you actually hear what the song's about, it's like, good God.
Yeah. So that's one potential theme song.
Okay.
So we may do various theme songs. So if anybody wants to chime in on it, I'm not overly impressed, but it's something.
Now, what were the parameters you established? Like, did you just plug into AI, bald, blind, and buddies make a song, or what did you do?
Yeah, pretty much. I put in a few lyrics, and then you click a couple themes, and I said I wanted acoustic guitar. I said I wanted a duet. You can hear two vocals in there at some points.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So, and then it just kind of glapsed out the rest, and I picked the best of the choices. So.
And by we are going to be doing this, that's folks who are listening. That is Timmy. This is quintessentially Timmy coming up with crazy songs through AI. Yeah, I'd like to hear another version. Yeah. And by the way, have we heard any feedback on the Bono lyrics or no?
No, nobody has. So
no,
I got to come up with another one. But yeah, this was the project for the week, the AI podcast song.
I think that should be an ongoing project. I like it. Well, Timmy, I'm going to pull a doubleheader here. And by that, I had a lack job last week who was Donald J. Trump. He bold-faced lied to the American public about what was going to happen to the West Wing. He tore it down. He's going to build this gaudy, I'm sure it's going to involve gold and marble everywhere, gaudy ballroom. And then he proceeds to name it not after his children, not after a civil rights hero, not after a war hero, not after John McCain, not after people who, have actually accomplished certain things in their life. He's going to name it after himself. Uh-huh. Well, it's a seamless transition to this week's whack job because it's also Donald J. Trump. Now he is trying to get the Washington Commanders, who are moving back into the District of Columbia at the old RFK Stadium, to name the stadium after him. He is lobbying the owner of the Washington Commanders. First of all, just take a step back as a psychiatrist, Tim. What kind of a narcissistic, insecure child would do that? That's number one. Number two, he's lobbying to name it after himself. Me. Like, not his children, not his many wives, not his grandchildren, after himself. Could you imagine the audacity it takes, or just the insecurity it takes, or the narcissism it takes, or a combination, a potpourri of all three together, to think that people should name things after you while you're alive?
Yeah.
He's my whack job of the week.
I was saying, I think it would be less offensive to go back and calling it Redskins Stadium.
Donald,
you probably offend less people.
I happen
going
to disagree.
Back,
I actually think
back.
Donald Trump would be less offensive if someone had chosen to name it after Donald Trump. He is petitioning the ownership group of the Commanders to name it after himself. Could you imagine the uncomfortable nature of those conversations? Like, you walk up and go, this is like Ron Burgundy. I have many leather-bound books. I'm kind of a big deal. Like, this is straight out of Anchorman. I mean, I literally, this is the president of the United States. We are dealing with an insecure, narcissistic, self-centered child. And the only difference between he and preschool is one has nuclear weapons.
Well, here's one thing. Business can always pivot, right? So they'll probably, like, if they do it, they'll put the name up in Velcro, and then...
It's going to be 5 minutes until the ballroom is named after Lincoln or one of these guys that deserves it.
The second he's out of the office, even if they do, like, his leverage is gone, right? Business,
but that doesn't make it okay. What is wrong with this man? Am I wrong, Tim? Please, as a psychiatrist,
you're not wrong on this one. No.
It's like he's petitioning. I want you to name this after me. Could you imagine those conversations? So this is a doubleheader, back to back. I've never done this before, but he deserves it. I'm sorry. So
he's got
Donald
a streak
J. Trump,
going.
President Donald J. Trump. Yeah. So whack job of the week.
My hero is Jeffrey Yass. Do you know who he is, John?
I don't.
He is a billionaire.
Oh, wait a minute.
Investor.
I do know. He's here in Pennsylvania. Yeah, he's at Susquehanna, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Billionaire investor gave $100 million to the University of Austin. So the University of Austin is this new startup university. Its first class entered in 2024, and it's basically devoted to free speech, free inquiry kind of things by people who, probably think the universities that exist are broken. So they went and started their own. And so he's given $100 million, and the goal is that it will never take federal money and that the students will not pay tuition. So, federal money always comes with strings attached. And so I think avoiding that is critical. And I think that's part of what has gotten modern universities in the trouble they're in. So this is the guy's putting a lot of money where his mouth is behind the ideas of free inquiry and free speech. And I'm all for it. He's my hero.
Hey, here. I don't agree with his politics. I know he's he and I see the world as you and I tend to a lot of times differently. But he's under no obligation to give $100 million to an academic institution. And this is, whether you would agree or disagree, I think the University of Austin is something that has to be admired and studied because they are challenging the conventional sort of get the 4-year degree. This is what you do because everybody did it this way. And I think that's great. So
And John, the government is not the solution to every problem. And they're demonstrating that people can motivate and solve problems.
You can't tell me that a guy gives $100 million and isn't going to sort of influence the direction of who they hire, what they do. So I agree with you. I think it's great. I do. I think it's an all good thing. I just think it might be naive on its face to believe that Jeffrey Yass is just going, here's $100 million. Let me know how it works out.
Yeah.
So
maybe they'll name the stadium after him.
I bet he didn't include that in his gift. Oh my Lord. Well, Timmy, again, I always enjoy. I think these conversations are good because it's politics. I think that Mamdani, I understand, and I agree with you on its face. Communism is bound to fail. Karl Marx has long argued, by the way, that capitalism is but the third of 5 steps on the road towards communism. So who knows what 100 years from now will look like. But I just think that Mamdani, a la Trump, a la Elon Musk, a la most politicians are going to run headlong into systems of government. And I think it's going to be very pronounced in City Hall in New York City. So I just don't think he's going to accomplish much of what he promised to accomplish. Yeah. But I get your concern. And this is John Bolin saying, hey, Timmy, keep the hope. I've made it a year and the world is still spinning. I'm sure a year from now, New York City will not be a hellfire abyss, but we'll have to wait and see. And this is John Bolin saying, everybody, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
And I have hopes that he'll be as ineffective as you think.
I'm rooting for failure. Yeah, I want him to fail. Yeah.
And if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.
But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.